Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, without stable and well-functioning municipalities, communities suffer lack of service delivery. The Auditor-General reports are filled with instances of inefficiency, maladministration and non-financial control. To look back at how things have been in 2022 and look ahead at 2023, I'm joined by Harlan Cloete. He's a research fellow at the Department of Public Administration and Management at the University of the Free State. Mr. Cloete, good morning and thank you very much for your time. What a year it's been. I mean, the fragility of coalitions was probably the most topical in the governance conversation, along with corruption and inadequately skilled personnel. Just unpack year 22 insofar as governance is concerned.
Good morning, and good morning also to the viewers. Yes, it has been another difficult year for municipalities. You know, the Auditor-General's report that came out in July, again confirming that municipalities hear, but they are not listening when it comes to matters of governance, financial governance. Although if one looks at the Good Governance Africa report, the municipality in the Western Cape, one of them, the name now slips me, that municipality, Overstrand, not over, that municipality has done much better when it comes to service delivery. But it has been a very difficult year for municipalities. The same problems, inefficiency, corruption, lack of skills, municipalities here, but they are simply not listening to the Auditor-General when it comes to financial governance.
To what extent did the instability that we saw with the coalition governments actually contribute to the lack of service delivery?
Look, coalitions are difficult to manage, and it's difficult. My view that I said after the 1 November elections is the following, is that you know, the two biggest losers should come together. And in this case, the ANC and the DA were the two biggest losers after the 1 November elections. What we see is that when the smaller parties gang up against these bigger parties, or that the bigger party gangs up with smaller parties to keep the other party out, that leads to instability. And inevitably, if you have political instability, that spills over to service delivery because then you have administrative instability. And so if we have not seen the maturity yet, and my view is that the DA and the ANC should get their act together and govern with the interests of the citizens, because the citizens, for example, in Johannesburg, didn't give the DA or the ANC a full right majority. And so I find it bizarre that they can't get together, iron out the differences and govern the interest of communities. That is what communities want. Communities want safety, community wants jobs, community wants stability. They have not voted for this instability that we've seen in this coalition. And so it's got nothing to do with the people, but all about egos, egos, and egos.
Now, in the absence of political maturity, as many of you have said as commentators, there was also an absence of legislative framework to sort of govern coalitions. And many assumed that the DA's 5-point plan would probably be one that many political parties engage or debate insofar as its practicality or impracticality, but not many of them actually debated that particular 5-point plan as a starting point to that legislative framework.
You know, I had an interview with the City of Tshwane's Johan Mettler about a year ago on this very matter. And you know that our system of governance actually allows for the collective executive system, which I think is a much more stable form of governance when it comes to coalitions, because it doesn't put all the power in the mayor, for example. And so the collective executive system allows for parties proportionally as they have performed in the elections to then make sure that they govern together, because on a consensus manner, and making sure that the professionals in the municipality, which are the administrators, that they get on with the job. So the legislative framework is there, the option is there. It is being practiced, for example, in KZN. And my view is still that the collective executive system is the better system of governance when it comes to coalitions instead of the mayoral executive system.
So what are your, apologies for interjecting there, so what are your expectations for 2023 insofar as governance is concerned?
Look, I was asked the other day to speak at the coalition's birthday in Tierwaterskloof municipality, and I just simply went there out of curiosity. There, good. The Patriotic Alliance and the ANC, they are governing that municipality. And it seems, you know, on the surface, it seems that they've managed to put their purpose together. They've managed to put differences aside. It's a minority government, but after a year, it is stable. The municipality appointed a municipal manager, consensus in council. And so it seems on the surface that the council are getting it right. If municipalities, you know, and I think citizens, I was thinking the other day, we have a vote of no confidence in the mayor of Joburg. I think we need to put power back into civil society's hands. When is the civil society putting a vote of no confidence in the council? Because clearly council, they are not governing in the interest of the citizens, but in the interest of smaller political parties who make sometimes very unreasonable demands. And so one hopes for maturity, and one hopes that civil society will begin to demand better government from local government.
Mm-hmm. And then on the state-owned entities front, it's been a difficult year as well there, starting with Eskom. I mean, there, South Africans have experienced the worst of load shedding this year. The CEO, we know, has since tendered his resignation, although he leaves in March next year. What should we expect on that front? Because many are saying manage your expectations, because there's an assumption that it was the leader that was leading to what we're seeing, while others say, yes, in fact, it was. Where do you stand on just that conversation around energy generation in the country?
Look, it's been a difficult year for South Africans with load shedding. You know, it's almost like the Collins Dictionary calls it, it's a perma-crisis. It's that the problem is that we should not get used to this nonsense. But, you know, the problem in Eskom, my daughter reminded me the other day, we've had 14 years of load shedding. And so it's become almost a part of our lives. Now, I don't agree. You know, leadership is important. Everything rises and falls on leadership. But getting rid of the CEO at Eskom after 3 years, I don't think that is going to solve the problem in the short term. It takes more than the CEO to run an organization. You know, there's been accusations of sabotage at Eskom, where the army has to watch over certain areas. And so the problems of Eskom is deep, systemic, it's organizational-wide, it's the brain drain, it's the skill shortages. So it cannot just be one person. Even if you put another person in there in April, it takes about 6 to 7 months for any new leader into a position to get used to the organization and to really get a grip of what is happening here. And so the leader, yes, but it is more than it's a collective effort of the team, of the executive team, of a competent team that can deliver Eskom. And so the problems of Eskom, I think they are deep-seated. It didn't start yesterday, it started 14 years ago. And my outlook, and I'm generally a very optimistic person, I'm very pessimistic when it comes to Eskom, because it doesn't seem that we have a solution. And here I think, you know, government must also have a bit of maturity and a bit of humbleness, and to say, we don't have the answers. Who in the private sector, because we've got some brilliant minds in the country, how can we solve this problem of Eskom using the intelligence or intellect in business, in academia, in the whole of society to get to the bottom of this? You know, I don't think Eskom has shown that, you know, all of us are affected. All South Africans are not happy with the state of Eskom. And one hopes for a solution and a maturity that this can come to an end. But I don't see it coming to an end in the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm. And then politically, a lot happened there as well. There were the adverse findings against a number of politicians in the state capture report. Did the ANC handle the report's findings very well or adequately, given the NEC that has since emerged?
Look, the Zondo Commission says, you know, it is handing that over to law enforcement units, and one hopes, you know, in Singapore, they say the quickest way to end corruption is to jail high-profile people. And so South Africans want to see some of these politicians in orange overalls. There has to be consequence, because as long as the perception exists that people get away with stealing, with corruption, then that pattern will continue. And so one hopes that the National Prosecuting Authority, that one would see high-profile people being jailed. when it comes to the people being elected onto the National Executive Committee, that's not up to South Africans, that's up to the delegates, 4,000 plus delegates of the ANC elected, put their confidence in people, but I think that there will be consequences. Some of the people elected onto the NEC and to the Super 7 will have been mentioned in the Zondo Commission, the Zondo report, and one hopes that South Africans want consequence. And the president himself has promised consequence for those mentioned in the Zondo report. But now he is also implicated. The Section 89 report says he may have a case to answer. And so one hopes for a speedy resolution to these problems. But you will agree with me, there's never a dull moment in South African politics. It's vibrant, it's contradictions, and it keeps us on our toes. And so I think from the academic side, I think we need to be permanent persuaders and permanently making sure that even academia gets its hands dirty in shaping of the South Africa that we want, because I think we have now entered almost a new phase, post the state capture, which was a shock to South Africans. And how do we shape and define this new era that we are going into?
It's very important to see how most of our leaders will shape this new era. But speaking of Parliament there, when you were touching on the impeachment process that has since been closed now by Parliament, I mean, many are assuming that there is going to be a lot of backlash. We saw with the ATM that they're going to challenge it in court. But beyond that, there was the Electoral Amendment Bill that was quite controversial. Many NGOs saying it was now a watered-down version of what the court had ordered. What did you make of the developments around the Electoral Amendment Bill?
I think, in fact, it is a bit of a watered-down version, whereas, just to give you one example, for an independent has to have 8,000 signatures before he can get his or her name onto the ballot, and whereas a political party is only 1,000, and so it's a bit skewed. Our electoral system, the Zondo Commission also mentioned that. I think we would do best with better and higher accountability, which we do not have with the party list system. So anybody can get onto the party list, and proportionally as the party performs in an election, they will then get seats either in council or in the legislature and so the direct system, so there's been calls all along for a more direct system of representation where there's higher accountability, because the current system is the party says jump, you say how high, and you have to toe the party line, and once you're in council, you forget about the constituency. Then you become so busy in meetings. You carry 2 or 3 cell phones and you don't have time for the constituency. And so there's a call for more accountability, more direct representation when it comes to our electoral system. And I agree, Parliament has now requested to the Constitutional Court an extension, but it's going to be, it's important because the election will take place between May, I think May next year in 2024. So I agree with civil society. It is a bit of a watered-down version, and it doesn't increase accountability.
And I mean, we even saw the formation of BOSA, that's Mmusi Maimani's party, somebody who had been a strong advocate at the forefront insofar as having independence in legislature. But he also said, at this point, I give up. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. And he formed the political party going back into the system that he was trying to fight.
It still beats me why Mmusi and Herman Mashaba didn't get together. I mean, they, at one stage, they come from the same political home, from the DA. And in my view, Action SA and Mmusi Maimani's party should just join forces and present another choice to the South African voter. So that is my view. But it's going to be an interesting year next year, because being a pre-election year, and again, if it's a pre-election year, service delivery suffers, because the politicians are all then about making sure that they get re-elected, making sure that they get onto that party list. And that's a big fight. Normally there's electoral conference, etc., and various parties have got their own way, because, entering into politics is for many, the first step into the middle class. And South Africa continues to be the most unequal country in the world, the gap between rich and poor, as the World Bank confirmed in March of this year. And so entering into politics, for a lot of people, it's a career. It's not about service to the people, it's about loyalty to the party and making sure that you toe the party line instead of serving the people.
Quite unfortunate. And just in closing, many speak of an imminent cabinet reshuffle. Do you believe this will be the case? And if so, do you see a reshuffle contributing to greater stability in government at this point?
You know, I think the cabinet reshuffle is imminent. You know, I think it will be interesting to see how the president responds to the 5 ANC parliamentarians who voted against the Section 89, Lindiwe Sisulu and Nkosazana Zuma, are 2 prominent cabinet ministers. Whether the president will reshuffle and make sure that he relegates them to the backbenches. We know that the president is a very reconciliatory. He doesn't want to offend. He's a nice person. But we know that the Secretary-General cannot, Fikile Mbalula, who's now the SG, he can't be the minister any longer because the SG is a full-time position.
Yes.
And so all eyes are on January 8th. All eyes are on what the president will announce with the State of the Nation. But I do believe that there are a few, that there will be a cabinet reshuffle. But, you know, even if you shuffle the cabinet, it's about political will. I think I've just mentioned the World Bank reporting. South Africans are still suffering under the legacy of apartheid. You know, the legacy is so enduring. The crisis in education, there's a crisis in healthcare. There's a crisis in black economic empowerment, economic inclusion, and South Africans are screaming for inclusion, economic inclusion, so that, you know, this better life that was promised in 1994, that is realized. And government does not have unfortunately, doesn't have a good track record when it comes to service delivery to the people and delivering on the promise of 1994, sadly.
Mr. Cloete, thank you very much for your time this morning. That's Harlan Cloete, Research Fellow at the Department of Public Administration and Management at the University of the Free State.